Hi everyone, it's Harvey again here from Meridian Australis. I'm at Clunes and I am joined by a very, very cool person. I'm joined by Michael Earp, who is, among many other things, working with Affirm Publishing, Affirm Press, but was also in 2021 named Bookseller of the Year or Kids Bookseller of the Year?
Bookseller of the Year.
Wow, okay. General Bookseller of the Year. Across the board, just excelling everywhere. Michael has edited and contributed to some amazing anthologies like Avast, which is transgender pirate stories, What More Could You Want, and Everything Under the Moon, which is amazing queer fairy tales, many of which made me cry, and Love Oz YA. And the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you spent a lot of time working in bookselling and specifically around sort of children's books. What was that like? And then what was the transition to working sort of behind the scenes in the publishing industry like? Did you feel like your experience helped, and also what didn't you expect?
Well, it's interesting because I've gone back and forth between bookselling in a bookshop and working for a publisher. I had been a children's specialist at Borders for years, and then I got a role as a sales rep for Walker Books, which is a children's specialist publisher. And at the time I was studying early childhood teaching, and then I went on to do a master's in children's literature. So it all kind of fed into each other. And then I got asked to manage a children's bookstore in Yarraville, the younger son, and so I left Walker to do that. And then after 18 months or 2 years, I then moved to the little book room and was managing that for 5 years. And again, these are all children's specialists. It's just what I'm interested in, what I want to do. And then I moved from there back into the publishing side of things. And when I say publishing side of things, I'm still in sales. Like, I sell the books to the bookshops. So it's just a slightly different way of doing the same thing, but you do get to see how the sausage is made, I guess. And so I know, being at a firm, they highly value my past experience because I have that, what it's like to work in a bookshop, to the point of I know what it's like to buy books from reps too. So I know what makes a good rep, at least from my perspective. Everyone has different ideas, but so I draw a lot on my past experience in my day job constantly, and my experience in children's books specifically has meant that at a firm I've recently, in the last 6 months, been invited to be part of the acquisitions meetings, which is something, it's the one part of the entire publishing industry that I'd never had seen before, even with all of that experience. And so now that I know how acquisitions go, it's fascinating to see just how something gets over the line or not, and the reasons why it's like turned down at the last possible minute and that type of thing too.
Is there anything or any particular title that you thought was a slam dunk and you saw got rejected for some sort of crazy left field reason, or anything that surprised you about the acquisitions in general?
I guess at the end of the day, the ones that I was so convinced about that didn't quite make it, I was convinced about as indie bookseller headspace, where I'm more interested in the quality and the content, and potentially justifiably so, that not working in a broader commercial landscape meant that was the reason it was turned down. Not to say that it's not a good book or anything like that, but at the end of the day, the publisher has to be able to make back the money that they've spent on it at a bare minimum. And so, some things are literally just cost reasons why they don't get published. Nothing to do with the book themselves.
And so you're working in sales in the industry, in publishing. How does that lead to working and editing for the anthologies that you're involved in? Is that something just like because you happen to know people, or did someone at a firm come to you because of your experience in past anthologies? Like, how does that happen?
I mean, my primary goal in my entire life has been to be a writer, and I've just gone a very long way around getting there. And so the first anthology I ever pitched was Kindred, the one that Walker Books published. And I pitched that as the one that Danielle Binks had published, called Begin and Begin, had just come out, and everyone was celebrating that. And I said, yes, I love that, but I want a queer version. Like, let's do that, but gay. And so I pitched that to a few different publishers. And by that point, even though I didn't have a name as a writer, the names that I was able to suggest and put forward to be involved, they were big enough And so that's eventually how that worked. And then wildly off the back of that, I thought, let's do it all again, because, you know, I'm a sucker for punishment. And by that point, I had an agent. And so my agent helped pitch Everything Under the Moon. And again, a couple of different publishers made an offer on that, but a firm's offer was to do it as a fully illustrated hardback, so it was very hard to say no to that. And then that was well before I started working for them. It was about halfway through the editorial process that the sales team role, because they started a sales team, the first publisher in Australia in 25 years to start a new sales team. Most publishers are contracting and reducing their numbers of reps out on the road, but a firm were like, no, we're going to go big and take our list away from someone else who was representing them and represent themselves. And so I jumped on board with that, and it's a mix. And then the anthology, A Vast through Fremantle came about because I complained about the lack of trans publishing in Australia, and Fremantle contacted us. Like, I posted on Instagram and tagged all the publishers saying you need to do better, and Fremantle got in touch and said, yeah, we agree, what can we do? And awesome. That led to A Vast, and so I'm thrilled that that's how that came about too. So
That's so cool. I get a little like spike of dopamine every time I walk past A Vast on the shelf, and I keep ordering it in and recommending it to customers, and I'm the really annoying person who's like, you really need to read the Trans Pirate book. It's amazing.
But like, it's by trans people. It's not exclusively for trans people. This is what does my head in. People sometimes see that word transgender and think, oh well, I'm not trans, therefore that's not for me. No. Do you know how many straight books I've had to read? God. Like, it's such a relief to know that it was authentic. We just asked trans people to write a pirate story in whatever way, shape or form they wanted, and we got some really weird stuff, and it's great, but that doesn't mean it's not for a cis-het readership either.
Just quickly, in terms of all the anthologies you've worked on, was there anything that surprised you about sort of the difference between working with different publishers, or from doing it in a self-published manner versus going through one of the publishers? Are there things that surprised you about that process, or did you have to make any adjustments, or was it kind of working with publishers just made everything easier? What was the difference?
I have nothing against self-publishing, but personally I know that I do not want to be a distributor, and that is the hurdle in self-publishing, that I as an individual, I don't want to do that. And so I usually don't consider self-publishing for myself for that very reason. So I quite enjoy the traditional publishing process because they take all of that responsibility on. You know that every bookshop in the country at least has access to it, even if they're not going to order it, they can order it in the same way that they order any of their other books. But then I have done a self-published anthology, but again, that was a slightly different thing because we had this was through QLit, who I'm involved with, a queer Victoria-based literature festival, and we got funding from Midsummer's regional focus kind of activations program, and so they covered the printing and the payment of the contributor costs, and so we just had to do the work. But that meant we turned around from call out to pressing print was no more than 3 months, and I had to edit these submissions in a way that made them fit into the book, and put it all together with the help of a couple of other great people from QLit. But we didn't have to outlay the money ourselves for any of that, and because we got a whole bunch printed and that was covered, we now still have stock to sell, but anything we sell can go towards the next anthology that we want to do, rather than needing to pay bills or anything like that.
Final question. I think this might be a bit contentious. Myself and other queer creatives, not just authors I've talked to, really want to have queerness in the forefront of what they write about, and they want it to be sort of like loud and proud and accepted. But I know for me personally, I've talked to other people as well, there's an internal sort of concern about, like for example, as a trans author, if I'm writing non-fiction, I feel like there's almost a commercial pressure for like, why would I be writing about anything other than my trans experience, and sometimes I feel like a concern about being bottlenecked because of my identity. Like people throw around terms like rainbow capitalism and sort of tokenism and stuff like that. Do you think about that at all? And if you do, like, how do you navigate, I guess, avoiding feeling like a token or like a diversity hire? Or is that just an internal thing that creatives need to work through?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge question, but...
Yeah, sorry.
No, but like from my perspective, it's just like any of the other conforming... Like here at Clunes, I sat in on a panel yesterday that was a big conversation around when you release a very successful first something, that pressure. Do you deliver a similar thing for book 2 knowing it will potentially please the same crowd that loved your first one? Like there are these pressures that writers of all kinds face. When it comes to queerness, like I think the answer is the same. Unless you're being authentic to yourself, nothing matters, because if you're putting half-baked ideas out that you think will suit an audience rather than what's going to please you as a writer, then you're already... It's a false start. And so, yes, I do think about it. Yes, I absolutely make use of playing that diversity card. A lot of my opportunities have come about because I've been like, you need more queerness in your list. Like, put me in. I'll do the work. So I'm playing their game as well. I don't see that as selling myself out because the work that I'm delivering, I believe in. It's just that I'm playing their ridiculous categorizing in order to get it across the line. With Avast, for example, when Fremantle came to us and said, yes, how can we help? Let's work together. They said, they asked Alison and I to edit it together. They said, we can do whatever we want. It can be fiction, it can be non-fiction. And we immediately said, trans people are always asked to write non-fiction. And usually that is, the trauma that they've gone through. So we're like, how about we just ask trans people to write fiction, write whatever they want? And Fremantle were like, sure. And then Fremantle said, and what's the theme going to be? And we thought for a long time about it. And when we came up with pirates, we thought, this is so ridiculous. There's no way they'll say yes to this. And then they were like, yes, it's genius. It's perfect. Go. And so there was just so much freedom involved in being allowed to, A, write fiction, not rely on personal trauma as a way to sell books, but also being able to choose the very topic. So then we made all these illusions about how, trans people do live outside societal norms and have to push back against rules and protest and all sorts of things, just like pirates did to an extent throughout history.
You can find all of the anthologies and work that Michael has done in most good bookstores. You can also check out their website, check out our Instagram, Meridian Australis, and our website, meridianaustralis.au. Michael, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
You too, thank you.